from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Nirmana moha jita sanga dosa adhatma nitta vinivrata kamaha dandhero vimukta sukadukha samne gachanti amutta padam avannatat.
Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom.
Text 6. Natat Vashate Shurya Nasa Shankuna Prabhakaya Yadgadvana Nirvana Tatante Tadhama Paramam Mama.
That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world.
Mame bhaksha jibha loke jibha bhuta shanatanayaha manasastana hindrayani prakriti sadhani karasati.
The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
Text 8. Shariram yat abhapanti yat chapi uktamati hasya bhara grati bhaitani samarti vayur gandhana ivashayat.
The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another.
Text 9. Srutam chakshu sasparasanam cha rasanam gaharanam evacha adhistaya manaschayam vishan upaseta bhete.
The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects.
Text 10. Utkaranamatam stitham vapi bhujyanenam bhagunan vitam vimudhananu pashanti gyana chakshusha.
The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the moods of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this.
Text 11. Itanto yogi naschainam pashananti atmani avasthitam itantopi akratatmano neinam pashanti achenasha.
The endeavoring transcendentalist who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to.
Text 12. Yat aditya gatam tejo jagat bhashyate khilam yat chandramasi yat chagno te tejo vidimamakam.
The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me.
Text 13. Gamavishya cha bhutani dharmayami aham ojasa punashmi chatuddhi sharva shomo bhudva rasatmakha.
I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables.
Text 14. Aham Vaishnavhanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Asrita Prana Pranapana Samakukta Vachami Anam Chaturvidam.
I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff.
Text 15. Sarva Sachaham Hridishannivisto Tasmiti Janam Apochinam Cha Vedascha Sarve Aham Veva Vedo Vedanta Kripeda Vid Eva Chaham.
I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
Text 16. Devam emo Purusho Loke Chaksharas Sharas Chakshara Evacha Shara Sharvani Bhutani Bhutastito Shara Uchate.
There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible.
Text 17. Uttama Purushasta Anya Paramatmeti Uddharata Yolokattaram Avishya Vibhakti Abhaya Ishvara.
Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them.
Text 18. Yasmat Saram Atitoham Aksharat Apichotama Atosmi Loke Vedacha Pratita Purushattama.
Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person.
Text 19. Yomam Evam Ashami Uddho Janati Purushattamam Sa Sarvabhi Bhajati Mam Sarva Bhavena Bharata.
Whoever knows me as the supreme personality of Godhead, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata.
Text 20. Iti guha tamam shastram idam ukam mayan yagha etat buddha buddhiman sa shastra krastascha bharata.
This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection.
Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Sambhade Purushottamayaga Nama Pancho Dasho Adhyaya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, back to you.
Prabhuji, are you there?
Hare Krishna. Sorry, I made the schoolboy error. I forgot to unmute myself. Okay. Thank you, Mitali Mataji. Thank you, Siddharth Prabhu. I guess you have not heard me. And so this is the first time I think Siddharth Prabhu is reciting. And it's maybe also the first time he's joining us. So thank you very much,
Thank you,
Prabhu. I hope you found it enlivening.
Absolutely.
Yes, and Mitali Mataji, was this the first time you are reciting?
Second time, Prabhuji. Second time Sanskrit, yeah.
Okay, and I guess you find it very enlivening also.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you very much. So today we will continue with text number 16. So let me share my screen. Okay, oh, what happened there? Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Let's see if there's any questions. Hare Krishna. So before we recite, as we customarily do, we will recite the Mangala Charanam prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Malitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Prasthacharya Shatharine. So, text 16 again. Dvav imo purusho loke sharas chakshara evacha sharaha sarvani bhutani kutosto shara uchyate. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. So yesterday we read the first paragraph of the purport, and today I'll read the second part. According to the statement, purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in the world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies, which are changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made out of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. They all exist in oneness. Shara Sarvani Bhutani. any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. So it's wonderful verses. So yesterday we spoke. I didn't emphasize one particular point. These verses, starting with verse number 16 in chapter 15, 16, 17, and 18, they are known as Trisloki Bhagavad Gita, or Bhagavad Gita in 3 slokas. Now, we understand that previously we also discussed Chatursloki Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell. Can anyone remember which are the Chaturslokis Bhagavad Gita? Which are the verses?
I think it's chapter 10, 8, 9, and 10, 11.
Yes, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Can anyone remember any of the verses or the gist of any of those verses? I'll read it.
The first one is
Aham Sarvasya Prabhu.
Yes, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu. Prabhu, you were saying something?
Okay.
I'm the source of the spiritual and material manifestation. Everything emanates from me. I think wise who know me.
Yes,
Yeah,
wise
something like that.
The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and
service,
worship
yeah.
me with all their hearts.
Yeah.
Krishna Vani Mataji, you were saying the other shlokas. Do you want to also remind us?
I was going to chant the first one. Sarvasya
Okay.
Aham. Oh no,
Ladies first.
sorry. Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matta Sarvam Pravartate Iti Matva Bhajante Ma Bhuta Bhavam Samanvitam.
Okay, yes, thank you. So the Chatur Shloki Bhagavad Gita is, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. Those who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their heart, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So that is known as Chatur Shloki, whole Bhagavad Gita in 4 nutshell verses. Now these verses we're reading 15, chapter 15, 16, 17, and 18. They are known, and our acharyas have explained them as Trisloki Bhagavad Gita. And they have special significance. They have special significance. Srila Prabhupada explains that there are 3 purposes of the Vedas. 3 purposes in that the Vedas explain 3 main tattvas or topics. One is called Abhideya. One is called Sambandha, the first one. Second is called Abhideya, and the third one is called Prayojana. Yeah. So Sambandha means
Relationship.
Abhideya means
The process.
Process.
The relationship.
process, yes. And Prayojana means
The goal of
Goal
yes,
of
the
life.
Ultimate goal.
goal. So the first aspect called Sambandha, which means relationship, is very important. It is like a fundamental aspect of learning of Vedic knowledge. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, or actually Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, has explained Das Mula Tattva, 10 essential truths of the Vedas. And the first 8 truths that the Lord explains, it's quite a lengthy discussion, so I won't go into it. Probably in another verse we can explain those 10 truths. But the first 8 of those essential truths deals with sambandha, relationship. And it is very important to understand relationship. Everything starts with relationship. One of our great Acharya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, explains that the essence of sambandha is faith. And that faith comes from learning or understanding the Shastra. And the Shastra spends a great deal of time explaining relationship. So relationship means who am I? What is the material world? What is my relationship with the material world? What is the spiritual world? Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And so on. In those Das Mula Tattva, 10 essential truths, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that understanding the living entity who is fallible and the living entities who are infallible is very important. So this 16th verse of the 15th chapter is a very important aspect of transcendental knowledge. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like in this verse as we've been discussing yesterday, the 2 words are repeated, Shara and Akshara. Shara means fallible.
Can it be perishable as well, Prabhu?
Yes, can be perishable too. Yeah, there's also sometimes in Sanskrit, Shara is translated as perishable. But in the context of this verse, fallible means prone to fall down. And as you've explained, Mataji, perishable means that the body perishes. So the living entity is known as fallible because the body comes into being and eventually perishes, goes out of being. And then the other type of living entities is Akshara, infallible. And as we've read in the verse and the purport, that all living entities in the material world, from the topmost living entity who is Lord Brahma, who is the first created being in this material world, he has to also die. When Hiranyakashipu, the great demon, went to Lord Brahma after performing great austerities, he became so powerful that simply by blinking his eyelids, the demigods used to shiver. And they went to Lord Brahma and they asked Lord Brahma, please do something about Hiranyakashipu because he's creating a big disturbance. So Lord Brahma went to Hiranyakashipu and asked him, please don't cause this disturbance. You must want something. Tell me what you want and I'll grant it to you, and then you can leave everyone in peace. And the first thing that Hiranyakashipu wanted, he asked Lord Brahma, please make me immortal. And Lord Brahma said, I can't do that. Even I have to die. So Lord Brahma lives for a very, very long time relative to human years. But even he has to die. And Prabhupada says in the purport, from Lord Brahma down to the ant, everyone. But the amazing thing is, although all of us have to die, all of us know we're going to die, all of us see those around us dying, but still we act in a way that we won't die. We give so much attention to the temporary. We give so much credit to the temporary. Therefore, when the Yaksha asked Maharaj Yudhisthira, what is the most amazing thing in the whole world? Maharaj Yudhisthira gave this answer, that the most amazing thing is that although people are dying and they can see others dying and they know they're going to die, but still they act in a way that they, as if they're not going to die. Even ourselves, who have acquaintance with spiritual knowledge and transcendental knowledge, although we know that the material body is temporary, often we are still prone to act, behave, and think in ways as if we are not going to die. Therefore, Chanakya Panditi said, if you want to be a material success, think that you will never die. Because if you know you're going to die tomorrow, you'll just think to yourself, what's the use of all this effort? And he said, if you want to be a spiritual success, think that you can die at any moment. Just like if any of us on this call knew that we were going to leave our bodies tomorrow, or not even tomorrow, in the next 8 hours, or in the next 4 hours, how would we approach that time? We would approach it with a complete different consciousness than we were approaching it now. When we chant, we would chant like, this is our last moments. We would absorb ourselves in the Shastra. We would serve the Lord. We would absorb ourselves. So that is an indication that we do not think, because the truth is none of us really know. None of us in this online virtual gathering today can give 100% cast iron guarantee that at 18 minutes past 8 tomorrow evening we will be alive. No one can give that guarantee, because the nature of material life, it is so fickle and we are so fallible. So the living entities in this material world, all living entities who have a material body, they are known as fallible. And the opposite to that, the Kutasto, the one who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, they live eternally in the spiritual world. And therefore they are known as infallible. Actually speaking, and Krishna explains this in the Gita, our real nature is all of us are infallible really, because we are the spirit soul. And all of us at one point in time, we existed in the spiritual world, in that infallible atmosphere, in complete oneness with the Lord. But due to some reason or the other, we develop some hostility towards the Lord. And therefore we have come back to the material world. So understanding this, just not theoretically, but understanding this in truth, is what is known as Sambandha. Sambandha. And this verse, this 16th verse, explains it with absolute clarity. And therefore Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that this verse is a summary of the Vedanta Sutra. Yesterday we spoke about a Vedanta Sutra. Anta means end or conclusion. So Ved, Anta, or Vedanta means the conclusion of all the Vedas. And the conclusion of all the Vedas, we discussed in the previous verse, is to know Krishna. And in these verses is to understand Sambandha, relationship. So now I want to talk about what we started to discuss yesterday. And in the verse, there is the word kutastha, oneness. Those who are in the spiritual world, they live in oneness with the Lord. And we explained that this oneness is very different from the oneness that the monists or the Mayavadis aspire for. The monists or the Mayavadis, their aspiration is to merge and become one with Brahman. And that Brahman is the Brahma Jyoti. And we explained previously that the devotees of the Lord find this type of oneness detestable. They do not have any inclination for this type of oneness to merge with the Lord. And what is the main reason that the devotees do not want that type of oneness? Anyone would like to say?
Because they want to serve the Lord. They don't want to be,
Who's the relationship then?
Sorry?
There's no relationship. And we can serve.
Actually, we should be the eternal servant of Krishna.
Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, and thank you Krishnavani Mataji and Thai Mata Mataji, is when one merges into the impersonals, that destroys any opportunity for service. Because you've just merged and you're in that stage. There is no devotional service. And for the devotee, the essence of life is to serve Krishna, to give pleasure to Krishna through devotional service. The 9 processes of devotional service. So that type of oneness, the devotees have no inclination and no aspiration for. But this verse and the purport talks about another type of oneness. And I referred yesterday to text number 40 of the 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, which is entitled The Passing Away of Grandfather Bhishma. And we read the verse and the purport to text number 40 from chapter 9. And I would like to, how many of y'all after yesterday's session read the verse and the purport again of this verse?
Yes, Prabhuji.
You did, Puja Mataji.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes,
Wonderful,
Prabhuji.
Supra Mataji. Wonderful.
Yes, Prabhuji.
We all did. I did as well, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to
Yes,
ask.
Prabhuji.
Thank you. Wonderful. I'm going to ask firstly, Prabha Mataji, Puja Mataji. Sorry, is it Puja? Yes, Puja Mataji. And then Sipra Mataji. What did they understand about the oneness of the devotee and the Lord? In your own words, explain the oneness the devotee experiences with the Lord. What is the nature of that oneness?
Yes.
Puja Mataji, you explain, please.
From what I have understood, from the gopis, they were more purified, loving service. They left everything for Krishna, not caring for anybody or anybody in their family, but they were like one with Krishna and as if Krishna was one with them. And second, they were on a same footing with the Lord, equal footing with the Lord Krishna.
When you say equal footing, what do you mean by that?
They didn't think themselves to be considering Krishna as somebody who is out of this world. They consider him as one of their own.
Very nice. And Sipra Mataji, I'd like to hear your realizations, having read the purport and the verse. This oneness, how do you understand the devotee's oneness?
I think that feelings is that I understood that lover and beloved become identical when their feelings are like, you know, I mean, they just have the same feelings.
Mm-hmm. Nice explanation. Wonderful. Anyone else likes to add their realizations to this oneness that is spoken by Srila Prabhupada and Bhishma Dev in this verse?
The gopis were always they were always Krishna conscious, not at one time but 24 hours a day, and they had absolutely no expectation whatsoever in loving Krishna. It wasn't that I want this or I want that.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you, Srila Prabhu. Anyone else?
So the Lord's pleasure was their pleasure, basically.
The Lord's pleasure was their pleasure. Wonderful. Wonderful.
It was like simultaneous oneness and difference. They were same, but there was qualitatively they were slightly different. But otherwise they were operating at the same level. That's how I understood it.
Okay, wonderful.
I can say that by saying that everything is Krishna's energy, right? Nothing without him. That's what we have learned in the past chapters. Everything derives from him. You know, he's attractive, he's everything, and our heart and head, everything is for him. So there is no illusion arises saying that Krishna is not the supreme. And one thing I would say that even Prahlad Maharaj was asked by his father that, you know, who has this intelligence polluted? So he said, it's not polluted. It's only the grace of spiritual master and Lord Krishna. And thus no one is, you know, is that no one can be his friend, no one can be enemy, but we are actually the eternal servant of Lord Krishna. And I think so everyone should be to the platform of Krishna consciousness. So then we feel oneness as a servant of the Lord. That's what I felt, you know, that we have to be the servant of the servant of the servant.
Okay. All wonderful, wonderful realizations and explanations. I'll try to explain some of the Acharya's commentary on this. Anyone else wanted to say something? Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, in the last line, it says the interest of the Lord and the gopis. They had the same interest, that there was no difference in what Krishna wanted. They wanted the same, so there was no difference in their feelings. So it was completely oneness with the feelings and the interest. Everything, Krishna's interests were their interests. That was primary.
Wonderful explanation, Rupa Mataji. Prabhupada says the interests of the lover and the beloved become identical. Krishna's interest is to enjoy. He's known as Rasaraj, total submission, says Sandip Prabhu. So it is said the interests of the lover and the beloved become identical. They become identical. They have the same interest in that Krishna's interest obviously is known as Rasaraj, to enjoy. But at the same time, he wants to give pleasure to his devotees. And the gopis or the devotees, they simply want to give pleasure to Krishna. So they each want to give pleasure to the other, and they have complete union of interest. There's no separate interest. That my interest is, I want to enjoy. And as long as you can fulfill my interest, then we are one. But as soon as you are unable to fulfill my interest, then we become two. In the spiritual world, the Lord and his devotees, their interest is always one. There's never, as Prabhupada says, never disunity. And it's interesting here what Bhishma Dev says. Bhishma says the damsels imitated the characteristic movements of Krishna. And in the purport, Prabhupada talks about how Krishna made them equal footing. And in the context of the rasa dance, we all know that Krishna is known as Nataraj. He is the most expert dancer. If we can think about the most expert dancer in this world, their movements, one can just cannot fathom how the expert dancer can move in such, amazing movements, synchronization, flowing of movements, artistic ability. So Krishna, he has the most exquisite way of dancing. No one can match Krishna in his dancing. The way he can move his body, the way he can flow the movements, the way he expresses himself, it is the pinnacle of dancing. So when Krishna dances, practically speaking, no one can match him. I'm not sure if any of you, most of us must have danced with a partner at some point in our life. And we all have experienced how challenging it is to be in complete synchronization with the partner in our dancing. When they move left, we've got to move left, and suddenly we move right. We just have to know what they're going to do next. Are they going to move front, back, left, right? Are they going to lift? We have to know all of that at that point in time. So when Krishna danced in the rasa dance, the gopis were able to, they use the word imitate here, but they were able to match Krishna in every single movement, in every single expression. They were able to match Krishna. And that, in one sense, is something completely unfathomable. How somebody could match the most expert of expert dancers, and to match it without any previous practice. And the gopis were able to do that because Krishna made them one with his ability. And Prabhupada talks about Arjuna and Krishna, not awarding Arjuna equal strength. But with the gopis, they became completely one. And in Krishna book and in Srimad Bhagavatam, normally we think that the gopis danced with Krishna for one night. But Srimad Bhagavatam explains that was one night of Lord Brahma, which is millions of years. So Krishna and the gopis, they became one. They became one in that, one in interest and one in potency. So this is the oneness of the devotees in the spiritual world. All of the devotees, according to their rasa, they are in complete unity with Krishna. And when they are in this complete unity, the transcendental ecstasy or the love that is experienced in that type of relationship, it is completely off the radar that any of us can conceive of. And Prabhupada talks about oneness in the purport in terms of the creation. Prabhupada says oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of creation. And in the material world, we become one with the Lord when we become one with the purpose of the Lord. And the purpose of the Lord, as we've read in the previous verses, the devotee becomes an instrument in the plan of the Lord. The purpose of the Lord in the material world is that all of the living entities come out of the material world and go back to the spiritual world. And the moment we understand that, and we know what Krishna wants us to do to come out, as he's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, perform devotional service. When we engage ourselves wholeheartedly in devotional service in the material world, and Prabhupada even extends that, when we wholeheartedly in our life work towards bringing other souls, which is the purpose of Krishna, back to Krishna, then we become one in purpose with the Lord in the material world. And just as we are one in purpose with the Lord in the material world, we go back to the spiritual world at the end of the life, and we become in oneness with the Lord in the spiritual world. So that is the oneness. It is natural for us. At one point in time, we were all in complete oneness with Krishna. It is just that we've forgotten that. We've just got to remind of ourselves of what that position is, engage in the devotional service of Krishna, and then we will be completely happy. This is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. This is what the Lord is trying to explain in these verses 16, 17, and 18. I've gone over time today. I'll stop here. There were some other verses, but I'll stop here, and I'll take any questions, comments, or reflections.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
You also say about this achintya bheda.
Yes.
Can we apply that here as well, in oneness?
Yes. Achinta bheda tattva means, and Prabhupada has explained it very clearly in that purport.
Yes.
He uses the word qualitative oneness.
Yes.
So there's two types of oneness. Well, there's qualitative and there's quantitative. So we can become qualitative one with the Lord. Prabhupada says attained qualitative oneness. We can become one in quality, one in interest, but we can never become one in quantity, because the Lord is the Lord. He is unlimited and we are limited.
Yes.
He is infinite and we are finite. So for this oneness, we only talk about in the context of qualitative oneness, but not in terms of quantitative oneness. We can never achieve that. The Mayavadis think they can achieve the quantitative oneness too, but that's not possible ever. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments?
I mean, one observation: if Mayavadis think if they are just God and it just need to be uncovered, but how can God be under illusion?
Yes, that's a good point, Prabhu. Prabhupada says that. He says the Mayavadis say that we are God, but now we have forgotten we are God. But one day we will realize that we are God. But Prabhupada says, if you have forgotten that you are God, it now means that Maya is greater than you. And how can Maya be greater than God? And how can not God become God? God is always God, whether he's sitting on the lap of Mother Yashoda or he's dancing with the gopis, he's God all the time. It is not that at some point in time he does not become God. So Prabhupada says it's impossible. This Mayavadi's argument that one will become God again, it's just completely illogical. So thank you for that point, Prabhu. It's a wonderful point.
Prabhuji, is oneness beyond surrender? Because I feel oneness is beyond surrender. Surrender is you're surrendering to the Lord's will. And oneness takes you one level higher than surrender, I feel. I can't pinpoint.
Yes, by that total surrender, we become one.
Yes.
It's like when we surrender ourselves completely to Krishna, then Krishna thinks to himself, I can give myself completely to this person. And that's when the complete unity comes about.
Right. So is it slightly higher level than, because like Arjun surrendered to Krishna's will, but he was not at the same level of oneness as the gopis were, because for the gopis, the pleasure of the Lord was the most important. So it was slightly beyond the surrender level, wasn't it?
It was the pinnacle of surrender. Yeah, it was.
Pinnacle of surrender.
It was beyond awe and reverence. All barriers were broken. There were just absolutely no barriers with the gopis.
It reminded me of Govinda Damodar Madhaveti, you know, when gopis go to sell the butter, and all their singing is because they're so absorbed. Their total absorption was such that they're just thinking of Krishna all the time, even when selling butter.
Yeah, the gopis, therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, it's the best example of love. There was just no inhibitions. There was nothing. They gave themselves completely and absolutely to Krishna. Yeah, that's what we aspire for.
So, Prabhu, when we talk about the 9 processes and the Prem Bhav is the last one, is that the last Prem Bhav they reached?
There's actually higher stages
more
than
than that.
There's higher stages than Prema.
It's higher than Prema.
Yeah, there's about 6 higher stages than Prema. Man, it's Rag, Anurag, Man. I can't remember all of them, but it culminates in Mahabhav. Mahabhav is the highest stage of love of God, and that's only experienced by Srimati Radharani and the gopis.
Okay.
Yeah, there are stages above Prema too.
So it's Mahabhav, and the Prem Bhav is different, is it?
Prem is a stage of love of Godhead, but there are different degrees and of intensities.
Okay.
So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains there's different stages of prema, like Rag, Anurag, Man, all the way up to Mahabhav.
Thank you. And this is in Antya Lila, isn't it?
It's all in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Srila Rupa Goswami also explains it in the Nectar of Devotion.
Okay. What way?
I can't remember. I can have a look and let you know.
Because I'm reading that at the moment. So it's
okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Any other comments or reflections? Reflections. I'd like to hear some reflections maybe. You know, when you go out of the room today, someone asks, so what did you hear? What was the most profound aspect of what you'll discuss today that's stuck in your mind and head, in your consciousness? Any particular reflections from anyone?
Prabhuji, I remember the verse from Ishopanishad, Ishavasyamidam Sarvam. So in that verse it says everything belongs to Krishna. So we belong to Krishna as well. So when we realize that nothing belongs to us, actually, nothing belongs to us and we belong to Krishna, even every part of us, our mind, intelligence, false ego, whatever material desires, everything, our body, everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is Krishna's ownership. So we are owned by Krishna. When we realize that, then we will be in oneness, that absolutely we belong to Krishna. So nothing belongs to us and we belong to Krishna.
Wonderful realization. Wonderful.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I have one quick question, Prabhuji.
Yes, Chandrika Mataji.
So when the gopis, for 1,000 years of Brahma, you said they spent that much time. When they went back to their husbands, was it like a little dream for them that, how did, that'd be just like crazy to think you've had such a wonderful time and then you're back home so was it just they would be living like a normal life and not even remember what happened? Or would it be just like a little dream?
The highest, there's two types of love. Love in union, sambhog, or love in separation, love in vipralamba. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought that the love in vipralamba, in separation, is more intense. So when they are not personally with Krishna, then they are feeling vipralamba, and that is even a higher intensity of love. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. But I just think if you're having that much intense separation, it's difficult to concentrate on your normal life. Krishna obviously assists them in.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And but that's all Leela. The husbands and the partners of the gopis, they were expansions of Krishna. They were not.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Jolima.
Is Sita and Ram's relationship a good example of oneness? Because although she was absent she wasn't present with him for a long period. He longed for her, and he also did not seek another bride. Is that a good example?
Yes, the relationship between Sita Devi and Ram, that is a perfect example of oneness.
Yeah.
There is Prakat Leela and Aprakat Leela. Prakat is they are always, that's manifested, and Aprakat is unmanifested. They are always together in the Aprakat Leela. But still they are in complete oneness. They are complete oneness, yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention and your wonderful questions. All glories to your service. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.